Growing up, it was always just me, my mom, and my sister, Emily. Mom worked tirelessly to give us a decent life. Even when things got tough, she'd always tell us, "We may not have much, but we have each other, and that's enough." But everything changed a few months ago. It started with small things. Mom, who used to agonize over whether we could afford groceries, suddenly started talking about upgrading our creaky old kitchen. Then she announced she was taking a trip to Hawaii. Hawaii. She didn't even like leaving our little Midwest town. Emily and I exchanged confused glances when she brought home a new car. A shiny, brand new SUV with heated seats and leather interiors. Something so out of place in our humble driveway that it almost felt like it didn't belong. "Mom," I asked one night over dinner, "where's all this coming from? Did you win the lottery or something?" Mom hesitated for a moment, stirring her soup. "No, sweetie," she said, her tone too casual to be convincing. "It's from an inheritance. A distant relative passed away and left me some money. I didn't even know them that well, but it was enough to finally breathe a little easier." It sounded plausible, but there was something about the way she avoided meeting my eyes that didn't sit right with me. Still, I let it go. Emily didn't. 2 weeks later, Emily stormed into my apartment, her face flushed and her eyes blazing. "She lied," Emily spat, pacing my tiny living room like a caged animal. "Mom lied to us." "About what?" I asked, already dreading the answer. "About the inheritance. It's not from some random relative. It's from a man." My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" Emily shoved her phone in my face. On the screen was a screenshot of a Facebook post. A local obituary. "Thomas Gerald Simmons, 58, loving husband and father, passed away unexpectedly last month," it read. My heart sank. "I did some digging," Emily continued, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. "This man? He was seeing Mom. For years. And he's married, Max. He was married the whole time?" My head spun as Emily went on, detailing how she'd found photos of Mom and this man together on a private Facebook album, tagged by one of his friends. How his widow, Meredith Simmons, had no clue about my mom's existence until recently. And how this so-called inheritance wasn't some kind gesture from a long-lost relative. It was hush money. Emily's words hit me like a ton of bricks. I felt betrayed, confused, and sick to my stomach. "I confronted Mom about it," Emily said, her voice cracking. "She admitted everything. Said she didn't want to tell us because she didn't want us to think less of her." "Well, newsflash, Max, I do think less of her. How could she do this?" I didn't know what to say. Emily's voice was trembling now, but beneath her anger, I could hear something else, hurt. "What do we do?" I asked, more to myself than to Emily. Before she could answer, my phone buzzed. It was Mom. "Max, I need to talk to you," her text read. "It's important. Please call me." My chest tightened. It was just the beginning, but I could already feel our family starting to crack apart. I stared at Mom's text, my thumb hovering over the call button. I could practically feel Emily's eyes boring into me. "Don't," she snapped, crossing her arms. "If you call her, she's just going to spin this into some sob story to make you feel bad for her. That's what she does." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. She's still our mom. She lied to us, Max. She slept with a married man for years. And now she's spending blood money like it's a gift from heaven." "Emily, calm down." "Don't tell me to calm down," she exploded. "This is a mess, Max. And it's going to get worse. You think his wife is just going to let this go? Mom's name is probably already in their lawyer's hands." Her words hit me like a slap, but before I could respond, Emily grabbed her bag and stormed toward the door. "I can't do this right now," she said, her voice tight. "You can call her if you want, but don't say I didn't warn you." And with that, she was gone, leaving a tension in the air so thick it felt like it was suffocating me. I stared at my phone again, the screen still lit with Mom's text. My gut told me Emily was right. There was more to this than Mom was saying, but I needed to hear it from her. I called. She picked up on the second ring. "Max," she said, her voice shaky but hopeful. "I'm so glad you called." "Mom," I said, my tone harsher than I intended. "What's going on? And don't give me that distant relative's story. Emily told me everything. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, Mom let out a heavy sigh. "Okay," she said quietly. "You're right. I lied." Hearing her admit it didn't make me feel better. If anything, it made me feel worse. "I didn't mean for you or Emily to find out this way," she continued. "I was going to tell you eventually. I didn't know how." "Tell us what?" I pressed. "That you were sleeping with a married man? That you've been spending money that doesn't belong to you?" "It's not like that, Max," she said, her voice cracking. "Thomas loved me. He cared about me in a way no one else ever has. I didn't even know he was married when we first met. And when you did find out?" She was silent again, and I knew the answer. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He told me he was unhappy, that he was going to leave her. And when he passed," her voice broke, and I could hear her trying to hold back tears. "When he passed, he left me the money because he wanted to take care of me. Of us." "Mom, you can't honestly believe that makes it okay," I said, my voice rising. "What about his wife? His family?" "They didn't care about him the way I did," she snapped, her tone suddenly defensive. "You don't understand, Max. You didn't know him." "Yeah, well, I didn't know you either, apparently." The words hung in the air, sharp and cutting. I heard her gasp, and for a moment, I felt a pang of guilt. But then I thought about Emily, about the widow, about the way Mom had lied to us for weeks, and the guilt faded. "I have to go," I said, hanging up before she could respond. I tossed my phone onto the couch and buried my face in my hands. Emily was right. This was a mess. And somehow, I knew it was only going to get worse. 2 days later, my worst fears were confirmed. I was at work when my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a news alert from the local paper. "Widow of local businessman files lawsuit over secret affair and alleged stolen funds," the headline read. My heart sank as I opened the article. There it was, in black and white. The man's widow, Meredith Simmons, was suing an unnamed woman for the money Mom had inherited, claiming it was taken fraudulently and should have gone to the estate. By the time I got home that evening, Emily was already there, pacing my living room again. "Have you seen it?" she asked, her face pale. "Yeah," I said, collapsing onto the couch. "I saw it." "I told you this would happen," she said, throwing up her hands. "And you know what the worst part is? We're going to get dragged into this, Max. It's not just about Mom anymore. It's about us." I wanted to tell her she was overreacting, that it wouldn't go that far. But deep down, I knew she was right. As if on cue, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Mom. I didn't answer. I ignored Mom's call, but the guilt of doing so gnawed at me for the rest of the evening. Emily didn't stay long. She left with her usual dramatic exit, mumbling about how she needed to figure out how to protect herself from the fallout. That left me alone, staring at my phone and refreshing the article about the lawsuit, which was spreading like wildfire. The next day, things went from bad to worse. I was sitting at my desk at work when my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Mom or Emily. It was an email from a local reporter. "Hi, Max. I'm reaching out regarding the recent lawsuit involving Meredith Simmons and her late husband's alleged affair. As a family member of the unnamed woman at the center of this case, would you be willing to comment on the situation? Readers would appreciate your perspective." My stomach dropped. The reporter had to have done some digging to figure out Mom was involved. The story wasn't just a quiet lawsuit anymore. It was public, and people were already connecting the dots. I slammed my laptop shut and grabbed my phone, dialing Mom's number. "Max?" she answered immediately, her voice shaky. "Mom, it's out there," I said, skipping any pleasantries. "The lawsuit, the affair, everything. People are figuring out it's you." There was a long pause on her end. "I know," she said softly. "You know? What does that even mean? How did this get out?" I think Meredith leaked it to the press," Mom admitted. "She's trying to ruin me, Max. She called me yesterday, screaming about how I destroyed her family and how she's going to make me pay for what I did." I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache coming on. "Well, congratulations, Mom. It's working. A reporter emailed me this morning asking for a comment. Her breath caught. What did you say? I didn't say anything. But you need to tell me what's going on. All of it. I'm not playing this game anymore, Mom. She sighed, and I could tell she was debating how much to tell me. Okay, she said finally. You're right. You deserve to know the truth. For the next 20 minutes, she laid everything out. She met Thomas Gerald Simmons 3 years ago at a charity gala. She hadn't known he was married at first, but when she found out, he convinced her that his marriage was in name only, and that he was planning to leave his wife. He was charming, generous, and made her feel seen for the first time in years. When he died suddenly of a heart attack, Mom was devastated. But a week after the funeral, she received a letter from his lawyer. In it, Thomas explained that he had set aside a significant sum of money for her in a private account, separate from the estate he'd left to his wife and children. It was his way of ensuring she was taken care of, even after he was gone. I didn't ask for any of this, Max, she said, her voice breaking. I didn't even know about the money until after he was gone. But I thought maybe it was his way of making up for all the lies. And I thought I could finally do something good with it, for us. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to believe her, but another part of me couldn't ignore the fact that she had knowingly stayed with a married man, even if he'd fed her lies about leaving his wife. Mom, this isn't just about you anymore, I said finally. This is going to affect all of us. Me, Emily, even your grandkids someday. Meredith's not going to stop until she destroys you. I know, she whispered, but I don't know what to do. Figure it out, I snapped, harsher than I intended. Because Emily and I can't keep cleaning up your messes. The next day, things escalated. I was grocery shopping when my phone buzzed with a news alert. I groaned, expecting another article about the lawsuit, but this one stopped me in my tracks. Widow's lawsuit heats up as alleged mistress children dragged into court drama. My hands shook as I opened the article. Meredith had named not just Mom, but Emily and me as potential witnesses in the case. She was claiming that we were complicit in helping Mom hide her relationship with Thomas and that we benefited financially from the inheritance. I felt the blood drain from my face. Before I could fully process the article, my phone buzzed again. It was Emily. Did you see it? She asked the moment I picked up. Yes, I said through gritted teeth. This is insane, Max. She's trying to drag us down with Mom. And for what? To embarrass us? To make a point? She wants to ruin Mom, I said quietly. And she doesn't care who gets caught in the crossfire. Emily sighed. We need to do something. We need to talk to a lawyer. Or... No, I said firmly. This isn't our fight, Emily. It's Mom's. She made this mess, and she needs to clean it up. Max. Let her deal with it, I snapped, cutting her off. I'm done. I hung up before she could argue and leaned against the grocery cart, feeling utterly defeated. For the first time in my life, I wasn't sure if our family would survive this. The courtroom was suffocating. The polished wooden benches, the high ceilings, the quiet murmur of voices. It all felt unreal, like I was watching someone else's life unfold on a TV screen. Except it wasn't someone else's life. It was mine. Mom sat at the defendant's table, her face pale and her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her lawyer, a sharp-looking woman named Natalie Cross, whispered something to her, and Mom nodded stiffly. Across the room sat Meredith Simmons, the widow. She looked as if she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine, impeccably dressed, with a steely gaze that never wavered from Mom. Her lawyer, an older man with an air of quiet authority, shuffled through a stack of papers. Emily and I were seated a few rows behind Mom. She'd begged us to come, saying she needed us there for support. Emily had only agreed begrudgingly, and now she sat with her arms crossed, her jaw clenched, staring daggers at the back of Mom's head. The proceedings began with Meredith's lawyer laying out their case. He claimed that Mom had knowingly engaged in an affair with Thomas Simmons, manipulated him into giving her a large sum of money, and deprived the rightful heirs, Meredith and Thomas's children, of what was theirs. He painted a damning picture of Mom, describing her as a calculated opportunist who had preyed on a vulnerable man. My stomach churned as I listened. When it was Natalie's turn to speak, she countered with equal force. She argued that the money Thomas had left Mom was a personal gift, given of his own free will, and that it had no bearing on the estate. But the real fireworks began when the witnesses were called. First up was Meredith. She took the stand, her composure unshakable. She recounted the day she found out about Mom, the phone call from a concerned friend, the photos, the letters. Her voice cracked when she described the betrayal she felt, how it tarnished her memories of her late husband. "I trusted him," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I thought I knew him, but he was living a double life, and this woman." She shot a glare at Mom. "Helped him do it." Next was one of Thomas's adult children, a man named Derek. He spoke about the strain his father's affair had put on their family, the sleepless nights his mother endured, and the financial impact of losing a large portion of the estate. By the time he was done, I could feel the tension radiating from Emily beside me. "This is a circus," she muttered under her breath. Then it was Mom's turn to testify. She walked to the stand with her head held high, but I could see the way her hands trembled as she was sworn in. "Mrs. Carter," Meredith's lawyer began, his tone icy, "how long were you aware that Mr. Simmons was married?" Mom hesitated, her gaze flickering to us for a moment. "A few months after we met," she admitted. "So you knowingly continued the relationship, despite knowing he was married?" "Yes, but—" No further questions. Natalie stepped in, trying to salvage the moment. She had Mom explain how Thomas had approached her, how he'd insisted his marriage was over in everything but name, and how he'd made promises he never kept. But the damage was done. The turning point came when Meredith's lawyer produced an email exchange between Mom and Thomas. Emails that Mom hadn't known were still out there. In one of them, Thomas wrote about how he was hiding the money from his wife and children because he owed it to Mom for all the years they'd been together. The language was damning, implying that Mom had not only known about the deceit, but had encouraged it. I heard Emily gasp beside me. Mom's face crumbled as she read the emails, and for the first time, I saw the fight drain out of her. After hours of testimony and cross-examination, the judge finally called a recess. Emily stormed out of the courtroom, and I followed her, my head spinning. "I'm done, Max," she said as soon as we were outside. "I'm done with her lies, her excuses, all of it. I can't keep defending someone who refuses to take responsibility for what she's done." "She's still our mom," I said weakly, though I wasn't sure I believed it anymore. Emily turned to me, her eyes blazing. "She's the reason we're here, Max. She dragged us into this mess, and now the whole town thinks we're part of it. She didn't just ruin her life. She's ruining ours too." I didn't have an answer. The next day, the judge gave his ruling. He determined that the money Mom received was indeed part of the estate and ordered her to return it to Meredith and her children. On top of that, she was required to pay their legal fees. Mom sat silently as the judge delivered his verdict, her face blank. Emily left the courtroom without a word. As I helped Mom to her feet, she looked at me with tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry, Max," she whispered. "I never meant for it to end like this." I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. The weeks after the court ruling were a blur of awkward silences and unanswered questions. Mom had to sell the house to pay back the money and legal fees. Everything she had worked for, the home where Emily and I grew up, the life she tried to rebuild for us, was gone. She moved into a small apartment on the edge of town, far from the neighborhood where everyone whispered about the scandal. I helped her pack up the house, loading boxes into the back of a borrowed truck. Emily didn't show up. She'd made it clear after the ruling that she was cutting ties. "She's just angry," Mom said as I taped up another box. Her voice was thick with the effort of pretending she wasn't devastated. "She'll come around." I didn't have the heart to tell her that I wasn't so sure. For a while, I tried to juggle both sides of the broken family. Emily refused to speak to Mom, and Mom refused to stop asking about Emily. Every conversation felt like a tug of war, and I was stuck in the middle, stretched too thin. One night, after weeks of ignoring her calls, Emily finally agreed to meet me for coffee. "She's asking about you," I said, stirring my drink nervously. "She misses you." Emily rolled her eyes. "Of course she does. She doesn't have anyone else left." "That's not fair," I said. "She made mistakes, yeah, but she's still our mom. She raised us, Em. She kept food on the table, even when she had nothing. Emily's expression softened for a moment, but then she shook her head. You don't get it, Max. It's not just about the affair, or the money, or the court case. It's about the lying. She didn't trust us enough to tell us the truth, and she dragged us into her mess without a second thought. She was scared, I argued. She didn't know how to tell us. She thought she was protecting us. She was protecting herself, Emily shot back. And now we're the ones left to pick up the pieces. I sighed, knowing I wasn't going to change her mind. What happens now? I asked. Are you just done with her? Forever? Emily hesitated, her eyes darting away. I don't know, she admitted, but I can't forgive her. Not yet. Meanwhile, Mom was trying to rebuild her life in her own quiet way. She got a job at a local bakery, working early mornings and long hours to stay afloat. When I visited her apartment, it was clear she was struggling. The space was bare, her fridge half empty, but she never complained. I'll be fine, she said one evening as we unpacked the last of her boxes. I've been through worse. I wanted to believe her, but the cracks were showing. She looked thinner, more tired, as though the weight of everything was slowly crushing her. I asked her once if she regretted it, meeting Thomas, taking the money, everything that followed. She was quiet for a long time before she finally said, I regret hurting you and your sister. I regret not being honest with you. But do I regret loving him? She shook her head. No, I don't think I ever could. Months passed, and life moved on. Emily got a promotion at work and started dating someone new. Mom settled into her job at the bakery, and though she still asked about Emily, she stopped expecting answers. Then, one day, everything shifted. It was a Saturday morning when my phone buzzed with a text from Emily. Thinking about stopping by Mom's place. Do you think she'd even want to see me? I stared at the message, half convinced I was imagining it. Of course she would, I replied. She's been waiting for this. That afternoon, I sat in Mom's tiny apartment, watching her pace nervously as we waited for Emily to arrive. When the knock finally came, Mom froze. I'll get it, I said, standing up. Emily was on the other side of the door, holding a box of pastries from the bakery where Mom worked. She looked nervous, unsure. She here? She asked. I nodded, stepping aside to let her in. When Mom saw her, she burst into tears. I'm so sorry, Emily, she said, rushing over to hug her. I'm so sorry. For a moment, Emily stood stiffly in Mom's arms, but then she softened, wrapping her arms around her. I'm still mad at you, Emily said, her voice breaking, but I'm trying. That's all I could ever ask for, Mom replied. The road to forgiveness was slow and uneven, but it was a road nonetheless. Emily didn't visit often, but she came around more than she used to, and when she did, it felt like a small victory. Mom never fully escaped the shadow of the scandal, but she learned to live with it. She found comfort in small things, her job at the bakery, weekend dinners with me, the tentative truce with Emily. As for me, I stopped trying to fix everything. I realized some wounds take time to heal, and some scars never fully fade. But through it all, we were still a family. Messy, fractured, imperfect, but still a family. And somehow that was enough.